Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about the Fantastic Four. But before we get into that, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. That helps us out on our end with the YouTube algorithm, but also we love hearing from you guys. We've got a fantastic community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. So, all that said, let's dive in. Prologue to today's story begins on Earth K in November of 1961, when Ben Grimm, Reed Richards, Susan Storm, and her younger brother Johnny take part in the space race. They are trying to beat the USSR to the moon. So they rushed the rocket. And as a consequence of that, the four of them are bombarded by cosmic radiation that originated from Galen of Ta, the first being to be known as Galactus. More on that later on. Anyway, so Ben, Reed, Sue, and Johnny became known as the Fantastic Four. Sue wants to marry Reed, but Reed only cares about science. For years, she chases him until finally Reed agrees to it. And in 1968, Franklin Richards is born. Franklin will actually be the second being to be known as Galactus later on, but let's put a pin in that for right now. On Earth K, Reed didn't really want to get married. He was just tired of Sue pestering him. He thought that it would satisfy her. And likewise, Reed doesn't really want to be a father. So he builds Herbie, the robot, to play catch with his kids and so on and so forth. Poor Sue is then trapped in a loveless marriage. Namor, the submariner, takes an interest in her, and Namor has no particular respect for the boundaries of holy matrimony. And Sue does feel the temptation to run into the arms of the submariner. But the Sue of Earth K refrains. One day, Psycho Man creates an android called Hate Monger who goes to New York City and uses his powers to cause violence to break out between young and old, black and white, men and women. Wherever he can sow hate between different categories of people, he does. And he targets Sue Richards, causing her to take all of those negative feelings that she's been experiencing, all of that neglect and the coldness that she gets from Reed, and he creates a split personality within her mind. And that second personality is called Malice. As Malice, Sue adopts an alternate costume and she attacks Reed. She also discovers that she's been holding back this whole time, and her powers are way more potent than she's ever realized. In the end, the calm and loving side of Sue regains control. The Malice personality is overcome, and Sue changes her name from the Invisible Girl to the Invisible Woman. More time passes. Sue befriended the other superheroines of Earth K. Sue even spent some time on Paradise Island, which is also known as Themyscira, where she passed through the mists of eternal youth. So no matter how much time has passed, Sue will always be eternally young and beautiful, just like the Amazons. Anyways, so in the early 1990s, after about 30 years of adventuring, Sue was targeted by Adam Warlock's evil twin, a villain known as the Magus. And it was Magus who used the power of the Infinity Gems to split Sue into two separate beings. Her good side was in control of her original body, while the mind of Malice now had a body of its own and was Sue's evil twin. As is so often the case, the heroes were triumphant, and both the Magus and Malice were defeated. Which brings us to the main plot of today's tale. It is now the year 2025 on Earth K, and Sue Storm is now married to a man named Jack. He's a hero akin to Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze, in many ways, but specifically in the sense that he has great wealth and he owns various bits of property around the globe. Some are tropical islands, some are grand estates in the countryside, and some are buildings in New York City. The Fantastic Four originally lived in the Baxter Building. Then in 1986, Reed built Four Freedoms Plaza. In Reed's mind, Four Freedoms Plaza was superior because it was more high tech. But for Sue, the Baxter Building was her home. It's where she had raised Franklin and Valeria. So Jack bought the old Baxter Building for Sue and him to live in. And on weekends, when she had custody of the kids, it was a short trip to there from the Four Freedoms Plaza. While on weekends, when Reed had legal custody, the kids would spend time in Four Freedoms Plaza with Herbie the robot. Point being, on this particular day, Sue Storm is shopping on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan when she's attacked by Malice. And on paper, the two women seem evenly matched. But in practice, Malice is far more aggressive, and she's willing to hurt innocent bystanders. So the good Sue is losing the battle to her evil twin because the heroic woman is erecting invisible force fields around innocent women and children, and she's spreading herself thin while Malice pushes the attack. Just then, Malice gets hit by a fireball from Johnny Storm. Malice tries to manipulate Johnny, saying something about him hitting a lady. Johnny quips back, saying she's no lady, she's his sister. And he used to hit his sister all the time growing up. Then he roasts her some more, which is less about physical damage and more about trying to tire her out. Malice erects a force field around Johnny, snuffing out his flames. But as she does that, the heroic Sue blasts Malice using her force manipulation. That, by the way, is the same power that Green Lantern has. It's just that Sue's constructs are transparent rather than green. Ben and Reed show up in the Fantasticar. Reed glides down in the shape of a hang glider while Ben cracks his orange rock knuckles and says, "It's clobberin' time." Malice creates a small, invisible sphere in the windpipe of Ben Grimm, then expands it. The heroic Sue sees this and she puts an invisible band around the neck of the thing, reinforcing it. Reed does his best face hugger impression, grabbing onto the face of Malice and suffocating her. Malice looks like she's trying to scream through a layer of blue tar, and Reed's bodily surface oozes into her mouth and nostrils, choking her out. Since Malice is sort of Reed's ex wife, there's something really unsettling about this scene. But before too long, Malice is knocked out. Reed releases her, then places a metal disc on the ground. Malice is moved onto the disc by H.E.R.B.I.E, the robot, and then the disc is activated. And this is a gadget that has a power from Blood of Heroes called Time Stop. As long as Malice is laying on the disc, she is in a 10-foot by 10-foot area where time does not pass whatsoever. And that brings us to the epilogue. As Herbie the robot loads the disc onto the back of the Fantasticar, Sue tries to be civil and talk to Reed. And it's been a long time since they've spoken. So she tells him that he looks healthy and young. And Reed wrongly interprets this as her asking what he's been up to. So he starts droning on about the scientific experiments that he's currently working on. Ben Grimm sees Sue and he gives her this big teddy bear hug and calls her Susie Q. And he says that Herbie ain't no replacement for his favorite girl. Johnny says something about Sue rejoining the Fantastic Four, but she's not so sure that's a good idea. And Sue says something about Franklin and Valeria, but Johnny is quick to point out that their team is called Fantastic Force, a spinoff of the Fantastic Four created by Franklin. And then later Valeria joined. And Johnny's not talking about them. He's talking about the Fantastic Four. And Ben says, yeah, ain't nothing like the original. Sue says that she doesn't think that Reed would approve, and it's actually Herbie who then suggests they put it to a vote. Herbie, Ben, and Johnny all vote that Sue rejoined. Reed says it would be illogical for him to even vote at all when 3 out of 4 is already a clear majority. So Sue's back on the team. That night, she goes home to the Baxter building. Unlike Four Freedoms Plaza, which tends to be ultra high tech and very sterile, the Baxter building looks exactly the same as it did in the 1960s. And it is full of knickknacks and old family photos of Franklin and Valeria through the years. And Sue makes dinner for her husband and herself. And while they're eating, he asks her how her day went. And she tells him that she ran into her ex-husband. Jack lets out a slight chuckle and asks her if she told him to buzz off. And Sue sets down her glass of red wine and says, actually, I joined the team. Jack looks at her and he's a little scared. He's worried that this will somehow result in him losing his wife. So he puts his hand on her hand. And Sue says, don't worry, what could possibly go wrong? And of course, something does go wrong, but that's a story for another day. We enjoyed this one. We hope you did too. If so, we would love it if you chose to support our humble little channel by smashing that like button. Make sure you're subscribed and leave us a comment. And from everybody here at the longest running superhero role-playing game, we hope you guys have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure.